Hey everyone, and welcome. So today, we're going to talk about a book you probably think you know inside and out, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. But here's the thing, it is so much more than a simple love story. It's this incredibly sharp, witty, and honestly, surprisingly modern look at things like class, money, and the huge danger of judging someone on a first impression. All right, let's get into it.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. As you can see here, for more than 100 years, critics have basically called this novel perfect. And why? Well, it's the dialogue that just sparkles, the characters that feel completely real, and this deep, deep understanding of people that makes it a total masterpiece.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in England, early 1800s, and the social rules are everything. Now, for a woman like our hero, Elizabeth Bennet, who has 4 sisters and an estate that can only go to a guy, well, making a good marriage isn't just a nice to have. It's literally a survival strategy.
And right into this high-stakes world walk 2 very rich, very single men, and they turn everything upside down. First, you've got Mr. Bingley. He's charming, he's friendly, everyone immediately loves him. And then, you've got his friend, Mr. Darcy, who comes across as proud, arrogant, and just completely unimpressed with, well, anybody. And all that tension kind of boils down to this one absolutely brutal moment. Darcy gets asked if he'll dance with Elizabeth Bennet, and he says this, right where she can hear him. It is easily one of the most famous burns in all of literature, and it perfectly sets up his massive, massive pride.
But here's the thing about Elizabeth Bennet. She is not the kind of hero who just, cries in a corner. She is smart, she is funny, and she has a whole lot of pride of her own. So that comment? It doesn't just hurt her, it makes her furious. It sparks this instant, powerful prejudice, and she basically decides right then and there that Mr. Darcy is the absolute last man on earth she would ever marry.
And from that one terrible first impression, things just start to snowball. It feels like every new person Elizabeth talks to, every new piece of information she gets, just confirms what she already thinks. Mr. Darcy is a truly terrible person.
And, she gets plenty of help believing this. There are a few key people who just keep adding fuel to the fire. You've got the super charming soldier, Mr. Wickham, who has this heartbreaking story about Darcy. You have the ridiculous Mr. Collins, a cousin, whose connection to Darcy's family just makes them seem even more arrogant. And then there are Darcy's own actions, when he just rips Elizabeth's beloved sister Jane and his best friend Bingley apart.
So, this guy Wickham, he really paints a devastating picture. He tells Elizabeth that Darcy's dad was his godfather and promised to take care of him, but that the younger Mr. Darcy, out of pure jealousy, basically ignored his father's dying wish and left Wickham with nothing. And coming from such a charismatic guy, the story is totally believable. So, it's really important to get this. Elizabeth's prejudice isn't coming from nowhere. I mean, if you look at the evidence she has, her hatred seems completely justifiable. The guy insulted her in public, he supposedly destroyed a man's life just for spite, and he single-handedly wrecked her sister's chance for happiness.
But then we get the moment that completely flips the entire book on its head. Just when Elizabeth's contempt for Darcy is at its absolute peak, he does the very last thing that she, or any of us, would ever expect.
He proposes to her. But in this unbelievable act of arrogance, he doesn't talk about love. Oh no. He talks about how he's been fighting his feelings, how her family is beneath his, and what a social embarrassment it is for him to even ask. It is, without question, the worst marriage proposal in history.
And as you can probably guess, Elizabeth just unleashes on him. She furiously rejects him and lays out every single one of his crimes, his pride, his cruelty to Wickham, and worst of all, what he did to her sister Jane. It is an absolutely spectacular takedown.
So, Darcy leaves, just completely stunned. But it's not over. The next morning, he tracks her down and hands her a letter. And this letter, it contains his side of the story, and it's about to blow up every single thing Elizabeth thought was true.
The letter is a total bombshell. It turns out Wickham is a complete liar and a scoundrel. He wasn't cheated at all. He took a big cash payout, blew all the money, and then, for revenge, he tried to run off with Darcy's 15-year-old sister to get his hands on her 30,000-pound inheritance.
And in that one moment, Elizabeth's entire world just shatters. She's forced to realize that her own pride made her want to believe the worst about Darcy, and her prejudice completely blinded her to Wickham's lies. She had been completely,
totally wrong about everything.
And that moment, right there, that moment of self-realization is what takes Pride and Prejudice from just a romance to a really profound story about growing as a person. And this focus on Elizabeth's inner life is what makes her such a revolutionary character, especially for that time.
The genius of the whole book is how Jane Austen pulls this off. The dialogue is so witty, it practically crackles, the humor is razor sharp, and her understanding of people is so spot on that these characters from over 200 years ago feel more alive than people you meet every day.
And at the center of it all is Elizabeth. What makes her so timeless, so revolutionary, is this fearlessness. See, in a world where women were just supposed to be quiet and agreeable, she's smart, she's outspoken, and she absolutely refuses to let other people decide her fate. She demands to be seen as a thinking person, and that idea is still so powerful today.
So, in the end, the story isn't just about Darcy getting over his pride or Elizabeth getting over her prejudice. It's about two people having the courage to look at themselves, see their own flaws, and actually change. It's a story about realizing you were wrong and the incredible growth that can come from that.
And that really just leaves us with one last thing to think about. We all make snap judgments about people, right? But how often do we have the courage that Elizabeth did to stop and think and realize we might have gotten it all wrong? It's a question that was just as important back in 1813 as it is today. Thanks so much for joining me.